going on. So I guess my first question I'm curious about is, and it's kind of, I kind of want to dive in. CT, you sent me kind of a separate of the questionnaire, some philosophy on life, and I thought that was pretty interesting about, you know, how to look at life and how to see life, and so I'm hoping you can explain that a little bit more in depth and give some insight, because I think there's a lot of people who on a daily basis struggle with how do I get through life? How do I deal with challenges and struggles and things that life throws? So do you want to kind of explain a little bit more on that topic?
Be glad to.
Awesome.
I grew up on a small farm in a little teeny town in southern Utah, and tragedy started fairly early in my life. When I was 6 years old, I had an older sister that was killed immediately when she was hit by a truck. When I was 16 years old, my dad had a heart attack and died.
Wow.
After I was in the Air Force, two of my very closest friends were shot down and never returned in Vietnam. My wife, at age 68, one day up and dies for no reason at all. A year and a half ago, we had a daughter that developed cancer and passed away at 53. Last year, we had a grandson and his fiancée and a great-granddaughter, 11 months old, killed in a car wreck. So, the philosophy that I explained was that there's going to be dark days. But tomorrow the sun's going to shine. And I have learned that. And it is sad, but yet it is something that I have learned to adjust to.
Interesting. And what, like, you know, that's something, and you shared your experiences where, you know, these things have happened in your life that probably have built upon that, but I'm sure you kind of have developed that philosophy in your life over time. What kind of helped you figure that out and come to that kind of mentality?
I wish I knew. As I explained to you in the article that I sent to you, this is something that has developed over many years. And I'm not sure, Matt, I'm not sure when I can say that I really learned that philosophy. But I think the fact that I grew up the way that I did contributed to that. And then as I developed faith, as I had responsibilities, it further developed that philosophy. And I am really happy that I'm where I am now.
Yeah. No, that's good.
I think one thing that's really helped with me and with handling those type of things is there's so many tender mercies that come along with those things that happen that are wonderful things. You know, there's always the good and the bad and the good. And so if you can look at the tender mercies and pick those out, that really helps a lot in being able to deal with the sad things that happen.
Yeah. No, I love that. And one thought I had when I was reading that paragraph, the thing you sent me in that email, and, sometimes like the sun shining, I like that example because the sun shining is not like something, it's a simple thing, right? It comes up every day. It's always there, but it's simple and it can be easily overlooked. But it's a joyous thing, right? It's a good thing, and so I think sometimes finding those simple, things to be grateful for, like you said, the tender mercies that you could easily overlook if you choose to. But I think that's really, I think that's a powerful example of something to kind of tie it back to. I love that.
But it's real.
And it's tangible, right? You can feel it, you can see it. I like that a lot. Because, yeah, everyone, like, I mean, there's going to be lots of hard times. And I think a lot of people face that. I think a lot of people who listen feel that way. And that's one of the reasons we kind of do the podcast. So, yeah, go ahead.
When our grandson died and our little great-granddaughter and Caroline, it was one of the tender mercies that we had with that was the night before we'd had our Christmas party at our house. And they were there. And they were kind of quiet and usually kind of kept to themselves. But that night they were so involved with everything, and they gave us multiple hugs. And it was like such a joyful time that was something that just made us really appreciate the time we had with them, and such a special time to think about rather than the really sadness of them being killed in a car accident.
Yeah, no, that's a good example of wow, huh? And they were typically pretty quiet, you said.
Yeah,
huh? Wow.
And they had their struggles with drugs and things like that, but they were on an upward path. They were getting their life together and just getting ready to really live a more righteous life, and so that was a tender mercy also. Kind of they were in a good spot. A good spot.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. And you guys have both had, like, just from what I read and then also knowing you for a while, you guys have both lived in lots of different places, like, kind of unique, just kind of like unique lives. I've lived full lives, I guess is a good way to say it. And tell me a little bit about those experiences. You know, CT, you were in the Air Force. Diane, I wish I knew more about you, Diane, but that's why we're here today, right? But I know you said you travel around and you lived a lot of different places, so I'm sure those all contributed to, you know, who you are today, and that even that mindset that you have of, you know, there's so many good things to look at in even the stormiest of days.
I think now she's lived here longer than she has any place else in her whole life, and has moved less in the last 20 years or 30 years.
I think the first 25 years at least, I lived in probably 18 different or more homes. Mm-hmm. We lived in Memphis and Indiana and then Florida, and then we went to Hawaii.
And why was that? What was...
my ex-husband, he was in international. He went to the international school, Thunderbird.
Oh, okay.
And he wanted to go foreign, but we ended up just going to like Hawaii, and then we did go to the Philippines, and then he started business in Hawaii. But he was kind of an entrepreneur.
Oh, gotcha.
And so it was all work, you know, going to those different places. But we had some awesome experiences. 15 years in Hawaii, but we lived in a few different areas of Hawaii, so on the Big Island.
That's a good place to be.
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, it was awesome. And my kids were born there, and so it was, they're Hawaiians. They feel like they're Hawaiians. And the Philippines was one of the best examples of places to live that I really learned from, because we kind of lost everything during the time we lived there. But we really realized the importance of family, belongings, everything else didn't matter. We came back to Arizona with nothing and started over again when my oldest one was going into his senior year of high school.
Oh, wow.
And so it was a great an experience that made us really appreciate the most important things that we're family.
And what's, you know, I've never really, I haven't moved around a lot. I've kind of stayed here local. And I think for, like, starting a new chapter over is always, I think for most people is like, oh, that's scary. I don't want to start from scratch all over again. What's that like? How do you know, was it challenging? Was it good? Was it bad? What was that experience like?
Coming back from the Philippines was a really hard experience because we didn't have anything. We were sleeping on the floor on foam pads, and we didn't have any furniture. My aunts and my mom and dad got pans and dishes together for us, and I mean, we really truly lost it all.
Yeah.
But it was great because we had so many people that helped us. There again were tender mercies of people helping us out, and we had somebody that rented a house to us without having to do the extra money, and the family. Just my kids learned that the things that really matter. It didn't matter what kind of clothes they wore. It didn't matter how much money we had. We had each other, and nobody really realized what a hard struggle we were going through.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. Yeah, I think it's cool to see people who, I mean, we're all pretty blessed in general, but, you know, when people are going through stuff and don't have, you know, a whole lot, it's, you start realizing how much you're given more than how much you don't have, which is pretty cool.
That's right.
It's pretty cool to see. Sometimes the people who have the most, you know, it's like you don't ever think about all you have, you know.
And the gospel makes the hugest difference. The people in a church, that the friendships that you make there are just, they're invaluable.
It's amazing how much you grow when you move. Grew up in a small town in Utah. I never left the state of Utah until I was in college. As soon as I graduated from college, went into the Air Force, then I started moving around a lot. Yeah. And every time we would move, it was absolutely amazing how quickly we could adjust and make new friends and be happy. So moving around, different homes, different locations, different ways of doing things, you grow a lot.
Yeah, it forces you outside that comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Because it's always adapting and changing. So what was it like? And how long did you serve in the Air Force, CT?
Almost 21 years.
21 years, okay. And what was the draw? Because I know, you know, the serving in the military, serving your country is not necessarily the most common path for people. So what drew you to it? What interested you? What did you like about it? Tell us, what was your experience there?
I don't know. When I was in college, I had to take ROTC. It was required.
Okay.
And I came from a family that everybody had served in the military. But I didn't know a whole lot about it.
Yeah.
And so then when I got into college and qualified to go to pilot training, I thought, quite a challenge.
Yeah.
I think I'll try it. So I visited with one of my professors, and he said to me, hey, if you like it, try it. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back to being an accountant, you know. That's what I was getting my degree in.
Yeah.
And so then when I got started flying, I got hooked.
Yeah.
And the adrenaline that flows it's great, you know, and I love flying.
Yeah.
Most of it.
Yeah, what were they having you fly back then?
Well, I flew a little of everything. Started out in a small prop airplane, and then I was one of the very first pilot training classes to do most of my pilot training in jet airplanes. Wow. So I flew the T-37 and the T-33, and then I stayed as an instructor and instructed students in the T-33 and then the T-37 and then the T-38 and then moved on to some fighter airplanes and then back to the training again. So I flew, I think it's 15 or 16 different airplanes.
Oh, wow. Wow. Huh. And so when you, just for the timeline's sake, so finished or went to college, came out of college, went into the Air Force, and then what time span was that? Was that during the Vietnam War? Was that after, before? What was kind of the timeline?
I went into the Air Force in 1959. Mm-hmm. I flew in Vietnam in 1966 and 67.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Retired from the Air Force in 1980.
Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense.
Long time ago.
From the time, yeah. And what was that like flying during an actual war, during, when there's actual things going down and happening?
I don't think much about the war part of it. The other part of it was so much fun that's what I tend to focus on.
Fair enough.
But for 1966 and 67, when I was flying in Vietnam, there were several things about it that wasn't fun.
Yeah.
Number one, I left my wife and two little teeny kids in Texas and was gone for almost a year. That was crummy.
Yeah.
The people that you lived with when you were there, that wasn't fun. Cramped, whatever. And the flying, most of it was pretty good. But when they started shooting at you, that's not fun.
Yeah. Understandable.
And I had to fly 100 missions over North Vietnam, plus a lot over Laos and South Vietnam and whatever. And then I could go home. Of the 100 missions that I flew over North Vietnam, there's only about 10 that I wouldn't want to go back and fly again. But there were about 10 missions that made me realize how insignificant and fragile I was. A couple of them, I thought I had met my end, but
wow. And what's and what, like, because I don't think many people get in scenarios where they've come to that realization. So what was that like? What
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I guess what was the scenario in which that kind of made you feel that way?
I flew reconnaissance airplanes.
Okay.
I took pictures.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we would go in and take pictures before the fighters or the bombers would come in and attack the targets that they were assigned. And then after they had done that, we'd go back and take pictures again. The area right around Hanoi, we called it the Barrel. But that's where, when you had a mission in that area, you could count on having a lot of flak, AAA. You could count on seeing missiles. You could occasionally see a MiG or two coming at you. But the missiles were the things that destroyed more airplanes from the Vietnam War than anything else. And they were fast.
Yeah.
We might be supersonic, and yet they'd still be 3 times as fast as we were. So you learn to pick them up as fast as you could visually and then outmaneuver them.
Gotcha. And was it pretty, I mean, I would assume you got trained on how to outmaneuver missiles, or was it kind
of a lot of it was on the job
training? Yeah. What do you do in those type of situations when it's, I mean,
if you could pick up the missile visually, and if you could ever get it 90 degrees to you, you could outmaneuver it easily.
Gotcha.
And they knew that, the enemy.
Yeah.
And so they would wait until they could fire at your tail. And then it was harder to pick up, and then it was harder to outmaneuver.
I see. And with these missiles, I just have zero knowledge on it. Would they just, they would just fire a missile, and are they tracking missiles?
Radar guided.
Okay.
And they have 2 different kind of fuses on them. One of them is a proximity fuse, and the other one is a contact. And usually, if they would get within about 200 feet of a target, they would explode, and it would wipe the airplane out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in those scenarios, when you're getting a missile shot at you, are you trying to flip around, go the opposite direction, head back to base? You have to complete the mission and get the photos. If it's too soon, or are they shooting them after you've already kind of gone the...
All the above.
All the above. Okay.
They usually waited until you were on your way out.
Okay, that makes sense.
But not always.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would just fire them at you, just, I think, to get your attention. But usually they'd wait until you were on your way out. We would usually take pictures at about 12, 13,000 feet above the ground. Then you would do anything that you had to do. Usually, you would light the afterburners, roll the aircraft inverted, and head back to as close to the ground as you could.
Makes sense. So, I guess this is, at least my thought on this is, when you have one of those experiences where, it's a tough spot and it's kind of like, like you said, you wouldn't want to go back and do that again. How do you, when you're in the military or the Air Force or whatever you're doing, how do you get back in the plane the next time and go, okay, I'm going to go on this mission, even though that was not a good experience the last time?
Some people couldn't.
Yeah.
We had people that walked in and said, hey, court-martial me, take my wings, do whatever you have to do, but I can't handle it,
Yeah.
We had people that, in a matter of about 30 or 45 days, would lose 50 or 60 pounds because couldn't eat, sleep, whatever, and just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I was paid. That was my job.
Yeah.
And I thought I was good enough that I could handle it without getting eliminated, and apparently I did.
Clearly, you had what it
That's
did.
a lot of confidence.
I believe.
My kids ask me, who's the greatest fighter pilot that I ever knew? And I said, you're looking at me.
What were you saying, Mom?
Well, there was one close call I remember you sharing with Mitchell, that time where you felt there was some divine intervention.
Absolutely.
I thought that was a great...
April the 30th, 1967. I had a missile that went off so close to my airplane that I thought it was all over. I really did. I started looking at inside the cockpit for indications that the engines were going to quit or catch fire or whatever, and got home from that flight, never had even one little hole in the airplane. So, yes, I consider that one of those days when there were a lot of tender mercies.
Wow. And what do you do when, I don't even know what the best question is I'm trying to ask here, but what exactly, that's got to be a testimony builder.
Absolutely.
And how's that fueled your testimony in the gospel? And
when you come that close
yeah,
to being eliminated, then you realize that, hey, the Lord has something else for me to do. I got to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And so then you start doing the best you can of being a husband, being a dad, being a friend, being a service provider, whatever. And you do the best you can, and every time you do one of those things, it gets you a little bit stronger. Like I say, this philosophy that I have developed didn't happen when I was 20 or 30 or 40 or even 50. And now that I'm in my 80s, it's getting there.
Yeah.
I'm not totally there, but I'm getting there.
He's pretty close.
It's pretty good. So tell me a little bit both, because you both obviously have strong testimonies. The gospel's a key aspect in both your lives. I mean, that's just obvious. So what's built that foundation? What's built that testimony? And I know we've talked a little about some examples of times where we've seen tender mercies, but what's kind of been, sometimes it's not easy. When life gets hard, it's not easy to always want to follow the right path. What's been your guys's, what's held you firm to the gospel and your faith?
Well, I have been active most of my life, all my life.
Yeah.
And had a pretty good testimony from the time I was 8 years old. But with the moving around and everything else, having the gospel in our lives and having people that are in the church around you, it's a built-in family wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
You're not alone. And knowing that you're not alone, that you have people there for you, and the gospel and that Christ is there for you, I think that helps you through an awful lot of things.
Mm.
And I think friends that we've made through the church, both him before and after, the friends that we have in the gospel are things that help strengthen us and strengthen our testimonies. But that's why it's so important to really stay active all your life, because no matter where you go, there's people there that will be your friends.
Mm.
And you make friends fast when you go to someplace new that's not around the center of the church, because they're the only ones there that you have a sure relationship with.
Yeah.
And so I think that's made a huge difference to me.
The community.
The community you have, yeah.
Realizing that we're all... Yeah, it's interesting because, and especially in some areas where the church is more...
Very small.
Small, or even where we're at, the church is more densely populated. Like, there's just more members. But when you get into a place where there's not as many members, you start realizing, we're all just people trying to figure out life, and we can come together and be a community and be, have common goals. There's a lot more in common than sometimes we give people credit for.
Yeah.
I think you realize that quickly.
When the Savior walked the earth, he said, "Men are that they might have joy."
Yeah.
Well, I grew up in the church. When I got into college, I became kind of lackadaisical, and then got into the Air Force, and being accepted by friends and whatever was very important in my life, and so I kind of lost contact with the church.
Hmm.
And then I married a woman that was not a member of the church.
Mm-hmm.
After she became a member, we decided that, hey, we better live our lives the way that we know we ought to. When we did that, we found out how much happier we were. We thought we were happy before, but these friends that you develop, the smile that you see on somebody's face when you provide a little service and whatever, we really became happy.
Yeah.
And the more I serve, the happier I become.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that's how it's developed, and that's what you get when you move around and you take different jobs, you do different callings, you do different things different ways. Happiness sets in.
Mm. Yeah, it gives you a different sense of purpose being in those type of, it gives you sometimes we, like, when we're doing things for us, right, it's an internal sense of purpose, which is important. But when you start doing outward things, it's an external sense of purpose, which is pretty powerful as well.
It is.
Makes you feel so much better.
Yeah, it does, because you're focused on how can you do good. What, CT, with your first wife, how did that, like, because I think a lot of people sometimes, especially in the church or just in general, it's like, marrying someone who's not necessarily of the same faith or beliefs, or, it may not even be religion. It may be politics, it may be anything that's different. Sometimes is nerve-wracking. So how did you guys make that work? And then how did that she lead to wanting to be a part of the gospel, and then you guys kind of getting more focused on faith?
Divine intervention. We got married. She hadn't even heard about Mormonism.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about it. We had been married about 4 months in Texas, and I got orders to move to Arizona. The neighbors were members of the church, active members of the church. We rented a house. The landlord came by every week to check on the evaporative coolers, to see how the shrubs in the yard was doing, see if the concrete was cracking in the driveway. He had a lot of excuses to come by. And then we found out he was a counselor in the temple presidency of the Mesa, Arizona temple. After visiting for about 6 months, he said, "Why aren't you a member of the church?" to my wife. He said, "I got a couple of friends that'll come by and talk to you. Is that okay?" And we said, "Sure." And that's how it happened.
And then what was the process from there? I mean, obviously, a couple friends stopped by, I'm sure, but
she took the missionary discussions, was converted, baptized. A year later, we were in the temple. 6 months after that's when I went to Vietnam.
Wow.
So all of these things happen in order for a reason. And we were active the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's interesting. We've been talking, I love this, the common theme, I feel like, of our conversation thus far has been, even through everything, finding happiness. And you're going to say something.
Well, I think even more than happiness is joy. That having joy in your life. I know since we've been married, it's just been a life full of joy. We have our little moments, but on a whole, it's the joy that we have with each other and with the gospel, with our friends. That it makes a huge difference. And if you look for the joy in life, you'll find it.
I've always been curious too, because you both are remarried to each other, and sometimes that can be really challenging. Being married and then being.
Oh, it was so hard. It was hard for him to take on me.
The other day, she asked me. She said, I asked her. I said, "Honey, have you ever considered divorce?" And she thought for a minute, and she said, "No, as a matter of fact, I haven't." Murder? Yeah.
So, oh man, but how do you make that work? How does that work? Because it's, even with young people, I see a lot of my friends who get married and then a couple years later getting divorced, and
you have to remember that the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yes, we have bad days, but we also laugh every day, every day of our life. And when you're having fun, when you find joy, you can overlook those bad days.
Right.
And as a second marriage, I think we had learned a lot from previous marriages. And we just learned to laugh at things instead of get upset with things. You just, I don't know, it's been a real joy for us. I think we've had it hasn't been hard.
Yeah.
There are couples that go into second marriages that is very hard and they struggle.
60% fail.
Yeah.
But we've been very, very blessed, and a lot of us, because we live the gospel, we go to the temple, we have worked at the temple for 9 years, and those things just really pull you together.
Yeah.
You have good people around you.
Yeah. Those kind of foundational blocks.
Yeah. And
Definitely
luckily,
make a big difference.
all our children were pretty good with us getting married also.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, a couple of them that were a little hesitant right at the very beginning, but it didn't take long for them to come around either. So.
And why was that? Just kind of the natural hesitations, or?
Yeah. Are you going to take care of my dad? Are you sure you're going to take care of my dad? Do you really love him? But when they were reassured of that,
When they saw how happy we were, that changed their minds real fast.
Yeah.
And how did you guys meet? How did that kind of come to be?
We kind of go way back.
Oh.
We
got married in 2010.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We've known each other since we've known each other
Well, I knew who
very
he was.
well since 1982.
Yeah.
1982. Okay.
So, and
But she knew about me. I didn't know about her. I knew her husband back in 1964.
Yeah.
64. Okay.
And I knew who he was. I was in the ward for a short time after we got married, and I knew but I never talked to him or anything. I just knew who he was.
Gotcha. And how did you guys? Was it just like a work relationships, knowing of each other? Church. Okay, church. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because you both live in Arizona at the same.
He was a bishop when we first moved back to Arizona,
and
it wasn't the same ward we were in, but we knew his kids, and our kids three of our kids went to school. Of his and mine went to school together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
So we've been good friends for a long time. He actually worked with my ex-husband for a little while even.
Oh, wow, okay.
And went to Panama.
Oh. What was in Panama? Because you guys have been to Panama a few times.
Yeah.
It feels like...
That was after the kids moved down there, but it was the business that they were in. It was an insurance business that they moved from here to the main office in Panama. So.
And it went to different things. We did scrap metal and then land development, and so several different things.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
Very up and down, but...
So, since you guys have been kind of this retired chapter of your life and together, and what's kind of been, and this is probably more of a lighthearted question, but I know you guys have gone on some cool trips. You guys have done some fun things together. What's been some of the highlights, maybe? And obviously the gospel, right? Key foundation. But what's been some of just the fun highlights of going and doing things together?
Oh gosh. Well, we do a lot of stuff together, don't we?
Yeah. We've taken a cruise
to Alaska.
Yeah. Spent and a few extra days in Anchorage, and it was fun. We spent 11 days back visiting her old stomping grounds in Hawaii. And
people remembered me. They remembered the lambs. They didn't know him, but, so.
And then we go visit kids wherever they live and grandkids. And so, those are fun things to do. But even more than those is we have managed to stay busy. I worked full-time until I was 76 years old.
And what'd you do?
Well, after I got out of the Air Force, I tried a couple of other little jobs that didn't pan out, and then I get into school transportation, school buses, and I did that for 26 years. And finally decided at age 76 that I had graduated. And so,
and what did you like about? Because I actually I remember you driving the bus for one of my school field trips one time, and that was pretty cool because I got on the bus. I was like, hey. And so, but what, and I've got my grandpa did, well, I guess he did school transportation. He did a variety of things, 30 years in school transportation of some sorts. So, what'd you like about it? 26 years is a long time to do it, so you must have been enjoying it, and there probably were good parts and bad parts, and
Again, they were not all fun days.
Yeah.
But the majority of them were.
Yeah.
Getting to know young people was fabulous. Just, and I see some of them today, and I get high fives and, hey, Mr. Davis, how are you? And so it's fun.
Yeah.
But the people that you got to meet, the people that you got to work for, was fun.
Yeah.
Same thing with her. And 20 years of
working at an optometrist's office. Worked for Chandler Eye Care.
Okay.
And made a lot of friends there. I see people around Chandler all the time that I know, and will stop and talk to me. And so that was really fun. And my sister worked there too, so that was so fun.
What do you think we can, because I talk to a lot of people my age and a lot of friends I have, or even younger than me, because I work over at one of the high schools here, and I coach basketball, and so I get to work with a lot of younger kids, and a lot of them, don't know how to communicate, talk, make friends. It's it's hard, and even as they get older into phones, I think have played a huge role in that of kind of shutting down communication. But you guys have shared, with moving around, the travel, the meeting people, that's played a key role, is making those friendships, that community, and even to where you're stuck in a career where for 26 years or for a long, I don't know how many years you said. 20 years in kind of the same career path. I mean, that's just not as common anymore with anybody. So, and then you said a lot of it was that community, those friendships, the people you met. So what can people my age and coming up, how do you guys make friends? How did you form those connections? What can people do?
Well, I think one of the things that we do still is we get to church early. We make sure that we greet people. CT gives high fives and hugs to everybody. and if we see we get a lot of young couples in where we have old people and young couples. We get a lot of young couples that come in, and we make a real effort to go and introduce ourselves and welcome to the ward. And as a result, the ward is a very friendly ward.
Yeah.
Not just because of us, but a lot of other people do it.
Yeah.
But we put ourselves out there.
Yeah.
We don't hide behind our phones or being shy or anything like that. We make an effort to be friendly to everybody.
We always have a good supply of Diet Coke in the fridge. And we invite people over to the house.
Yeah, we have people over a lot.
We have what we call game nights.
Yeah.
And we invite 3 or 4 couples at a time.
You've been there at one.
Yeah.
You need to do more.
I've seen the Diet Coke stash.
Comes in handy.
Yes, it does.
And when you do these kind of things, phones kind of take a backseat. And people laugh, they have fun, and they get to know each other. And as long as we can do that, people will stay happy.
Yeah.
And
the people that are depressed and whatever are those that will not.
Let themselves out.
Will not.
Yeah.
And he's
go past their comfort zone and have fun.
He has a great supply of jokes also. So he gets people laughing all the time. And you know that. You've heard his jokes.
I've heard a few of the jokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to share that joke on that?
No.
That was funny. What?
Yeah.
It only took your dad a week to figure it out.
Yeah, what was because we've all been family friends for a long time, and I've seen you guys as almost my, I guess, third pair of grandparents, because
we feel like Grandma and Grandpa.
Yeah, and but a lot of it was knowing my dad and when he was younger, and then I think you guys played a pivotal role in my parents' meeting. So I guess you played a pivotal role in me being here. So, so how did you guys meet? Like, how'd you meet my dad?
Church.
I mean, okay, church, yeah.
It was church.
How did that? And why? Because I know he ended up living with you guys for a while. How did he convince you to take him in?
Well, one of his missionary companions was my nephew.
Mm.
And the nephew lived with me, and one day he came to me and he said, "Hey, I got a friend that's moving to Arizona, and he needs a place to live." And we had an empty bedroom.
Mm.
He said, "Is it okay if he comes here?" And I said, "Sure." Of course, that's happened.
How many people have you had live with us through?
I have no idea.
And me,
Somewhere-
I have too. I've had a
somewhere
lot of my
around
kids' friends and stuff that have lived with us.
15 to
Really?
20 different people that have actually lived in our house that were not
Wow.
blood family.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
I guess that's another thing we both, and I was doing it with my family, and he was doing it with his family, but we both have done that through the years. So
Yeah, open doors, open arms. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, staying. I think that's and maybe that's really the answer to that question is being open. Because like we talk about the
absolutely.
phone, right? Where people close themselves off. They close themselves out from growth opportunities and being uncomfortable and doing all those things. I always joke because I don't mind text messages and things like that, but if I have my druthers, most of my friends can confirm this, but I usually will, first thing I do, if anything, is I'm on FaceTime trying to face call them, and they're like, Matt, stop trying to FaceTime me. I was like, I'm sorry, I'd prefer to FaceTime you than anything else. So I totally get that, but
I look back
Yeah.
on it, and of all of these young people
yeah,
that have lived with me, I learned something from every one of them. And I hope that they learned something from
yeah,
living with me. But in spite of that, it was a form of service that I was providing, and it made me happy, and it made them happy, and that's what life's about, is being happy.
yeah,
we've even had a couple of granddaughters and stuff live with us, and a niece, and even since we've been married.
yeah. You can't replace that human connection of working with people and sharing and giving, and I mean it's
Absolutely.
can't replace it at all. What was we didn't cover this much, but we talked a little bit about your time in the Air Force during the Vietnam War, but what was it like when you were doing the training and instructing? Because I know a lot of people sometimes they're like, don't put me as a teacher, don't make me instruct, but you sound like you really enjoyed it and had a lot of fun memories doing that. So what was your experience there?
Well, I often say that while I was an instructor pilot teaching young student pilots in the Air Force, I saved 500 lives.
I believe that.
499 of them were mine because of the mistakes that students would make.
Yeah.
They didn't know they did it, but it's a learning process.
Hmm.
Nobody gets in an airplane and goes out and takes off and flies around and then comes back and land the very first time they ever do it.
Right.
Just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the mistakes that they make would kill them
Right.
until they develop some confidence and some motor skills and the ability to think ahead. Then they can do it the way the Air Force wants them to do it.
Mm.
So yes, it was a challenge. Everybody didn't do it.
Yeah.
The elimination rate was pretty good.
Mm.
But when they graduated, they had the confidence that they could go out and do the job that they were asked to do with no problems at all.
Mm.
And that's why I say best pilot I ever knew was.
So, what would be like for someone who maybe is wondering if the Air Force or flying planes or something like that is what they want to do? What would you tell them?
I'd go back to the advice that I was given in 1956, where the professor said to me, "If you think you'd like it, give it a try. If it doesn't work, you can always go back to your other job." If you decide to go to the military, you have to realize that they're the boss.
Right.
You don't get to do what you want to do. You're going to do what they want you to do, when you want to do it, when they want you to do it, how they want you to do it.
Right.
So you have to accept that discipline in the military is at the top of the list. If you can accept that, you can be successful at whatever you want to do, whether it's a pilot, whether it's a medic, whether it's a personnel man, or whatever it is, you can do it. But you have to do it their way.
Interesting. And is that pretty challenging for a lot of people, do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Today, people don't like to stand in line at the grocery store.
That's true.
You know, and so they want to get preferential treatment. They want to, and it doesn't happen in the military.
Yeah.
You're talking to an old timer. Today, in the world, we have people that want to do things their way when they want to do it.
Yeah.
Our military has never been weaker.
Yeah.
But until we get to the point that we can convince people that they do things the military's way, then we can build back up.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think that's even stems deeper than just the military too, because I
do
well,
too.
yes.
I think on just even go back to a gospel-oriented conversation, a lot of people want to do it their way on their time and don't even factor in.
And think that they're right.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't factor in the Lord or His plan or His path or any of those things anymore. Yeah. So what's saying, I guess, what would be some advice from an old-timer to young people now who are trying to figure out life? And I think we've already touched on a lot of good prime examples, but what would be some good counsel to young people trying to figure it out and trying to find their path and live life, but just are unsure?
I'm letting you answer that.
Oh, yeah, I'm the old timer.
Yeah, you're the old timer.
Number one, you have to find something that makes you happy. Whether it's the job, whether it's a companion, whether it is hobbies, whatever it is. You got to find something that makes you happy.
Yeah.
That you enjoy. Then you have to learn as much about that as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And you have to adapt your life to what that goal, whether it be job, marriage, or whatever, requires of you. And be willing to adapt.
Yeah. I love that. That's great.
And I think that with young couples starting out marriages, they've got to be tolerant, and they especially need to find an opportunity, like he said, every day to have something to laugh about and find joy with, and to let your spouse know how much you love them and care for them, and be able to laugh at things. Yeah. And I think that helps a lot. It kind of lightens it up a little bit, and a lot of things that we think are so serious mean nothing in the long run of things. You've got to kind of look at the long picture too.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a lot more and a lot of struggles getting there, but it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a thunderstorm today, but the sun will shine.
The sun will shine.
And we'll shine tomorrow.
Yes. No, I think that's so true. And yeah, I love that time, you know, humor and I mean, I've had plenty of times where I've talked to or gotten upset about something, and a couple hours later I was like, I don't even know I was upset about that.
Yeah.
But in that moment, you know, you let. It's funny. So in coaching, because I coach girls varsity basketball, that's what I do over at the school, and a lot of people ask, like, Coach, why don't you yell very much? You know, because you get some coaches that yell a lot and scream, and my thing is really, I look at them like, well, usually when you're screaming, it's because you're losing, and I figure the only thing that can make one loss worse is a second loss by losing your temper and getting upset. And I've yet to see anyone flourish after being yelled or screamed at. So I think usually it doesn't work in their advantage. So I always just...
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just think losing your...
And the same in a marriage. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
What did it add?
Yeah. What did it add?
Yeah.
Other than some hurt emotions and then angry parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And how important is it, you know, tomorrow?
Right.
What kind of an example were you?
Yeah. Yeah. What impact did you make on them in
Correct.
the long run? And usually the truth is too, there's just so many ways you can communicate and motivate and talk to somebody without them, you know, rarely, like I think about like the Spirit or, you know, when we get revelation from the Lord, I don't think the Lord I've never had an experience where I felt he was screaming at me. So, per se.
And usually it's a still small voice that we hear, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. Actually, I'm curious about that. How, when it comes to, because I think a lot of people, when people talk about receiving answers, revelation, kind of, you know, when you're in a pickle or trying to figure something out, it's not always, you know, you kind of got to turn to the Lord and go, okay, what do you need me to do? How have you guys learned to identify, you know, the Spirit in your life and the Lord communicating to you? Because I think a lot of people hear that and they, you know, read scriptures or people, you know, say like, you know, get on your knees, you'll hear it, you'll feel it, but they go, I don't know what that means. So what's worked for you guys? How do you hear and communicate with the Spirit and the Lord?
I don't think it's always a big revelation or even not always a still small voice.
Right.
A lot of times it's just the feeling you get, feeling good about the decision that you've made and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Just, I don't know, what do you think?
Well, as good as I am, I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And I learn.
Mm.
I learn faster now than I did when I was young. And I think that is a big part of growing and maturing, is that you have to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you have to learn from them. You don't let them get you down. You just adjust and do it right the second time.
Mm.
That's why I got married the second time. I'm trying to do it right.
Do it right again. Yeah, I think a lot of people are fearful of failure or mistakes, and so they just stop. And being okay with mistakes and failure is like, that's a hard lesson to learn, but important lesson.
You have to have those failures to be able to accomplish things.
Mm-hmm. It's probably interesting being an instructor in the Air Force and having to fix a lot of early mistakes by others. That's probably teaches you pretty...
It's something you learn to recognize. It's something that you learn is going to happen, so you don't panic.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I've sure enjoyed our time learning about you guys, hearing your stories. It's just been... It's been eye-opening for me because I think there's so much we can learn from, first of all, just people's experiences, but then also you guys having lots of experiences to share and depth and knowledge of life, I think is just powerful. And I think a lot of people are going to learn from what we talked about today. And I love finding the joy in your life. I think that's a powerful statement that people don't hear often enough.
I totally agree.
So, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. We'll have to do this again because I know we've only scratched the surface of stories and experiences and things we can talk about. So, we'll do this again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, thanks.